Good morning. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here with all of you. If you have noticed, then I was there with you yesterday evening also, and really enjoyed being there, looking at different skill sets with which all of you come. Okay, it was really amazing, and I would like all of you to give a round of applause for yourself. Okay, really wonderful to see that. So in my introduction, I think there are a couple of things which I want to highlight before I start the session. I know after a 2 a.m. sleep time and coming back at 9 o'clock morning in a classroom like this is really difficult. If I were at your place, I would have been sleeping and just wondering when the session starts and it ends so that people can go out. So I understand that. But the way it is, I was talking to somebody, said, yeah, that's the case with a lot of us, but it also depends upon the presenter, how he presents, whether onus of making you awake throughout the session will also be on me. Okay, so I take that, and I will try my best to keep you awake. But a couple of things. I have spent a significant part of my career in really knowing and understanding what makes people feel good coming to workplaces. Okay, and as she was mentioning that I was pursuing my PhD, I have actually submitted my thesis, and the area is happiness at workplaces. And it's a topic, I have been searching for happiness at workplaces for a long time. And, the idea is that if you are happy at your workplace, does this translate into your internal customers as well as your external customers or not? So that has been one of the areas of study, and I can tell you after submitting my thesis, I became even more curious because I got more questions than the answers I got. And that journey continues, and some of those elements is what we bring in our life, in my professional life, as far as talking about culture, talking about engagement, talking about what makes people excited coming to work, and also really feel wowed about coming to work every day. So that's part of, I would like to bring some of those context during our conversation here. And also, some of the things which we are going to share today will be gleaned from the amount of work which we do across industries, across companies, and across leaders. I think that will be the idea as far as today's session is concerned. Culture is a very, very fuzzy topic where everybody can define the way they want it to, and there is no sure, there is no surety that this is the exact definition of culture. Okay, so it's a subject which can be felt first. You can feel the culture rather than define it. And what we have tried to do is our study across industries, geographies, and companies to find out what exactly are some of the things which is common, which is something which can be brought and be learned, and some of those things which can be practiced as professionals in your organization. In 1.5 hours, which I've got, I think what I will try to do is to bring together some insights about what exactly the way we define it. Okay, what is the definition of culture? How culture is built? What happens when a good culture is built in an organization, and what's the role leaders like you play, or the HR teams play, and the individual managers play? And then, is there a methodology through which you can adopt yourself in a journey to transform your culture? We will also talk about some elements around what are the challenges you face when you try to change culture, because it's like habits. Once it is formed, it's very difficult for you to really change that and get into something else. But if the business need is that you need to change, then probably we will also talk about some of the changes which you should be bringing in. While there will be a lot of information, I would put this on record that I'm not trying to teach you so many things. I think if you can just pick up 2 or 3 things which can be a trigger point for you to really see that if some of these experiments can be done at your organization, and if that is something which can actually help you do business a little better, then I think I will achieve the objective of this session. So I'm not here to actually put a lot of theoretical constructs in front of you and say, okay, this is how the world moves, and these are some of the things which you should be doing. But the idea is to bring some practical nuances around how cultures in different organizations are built, and what is the benefit of that effort which you will put in, right? So that's the idea. Apart from this, if you have any thing which you are curious to know, it will be good for you to tell me right now so that I can include that in my session. If not, then I will assume that what I'm presenting should be good enough for you. So anything you would like to know from culture perspective, anything which you would like me to touch upon, maybe you can put your point of view right now. Great. So that means I have got my agenda in place, and I will go with that that route. But I will start with a quiz, and my quiz, you can count your numbers, and I will give you a prize at the end of the session. The person who gives me the maximum answer. It's similar to the quiz you were having last night, and I saw a lot of people were enthusiastically participating. So I will also see that how many of you participate here. But it's a quiz with some twist. Okay. So now what you have to do is I'm going to show you some brands, logos. Okay. And what I'm asking you, have you seen these brands before I'm showing you here? Right? And it will be really great if you all can be also responsive, talk to me, so that we can have a session where both the parties are trying to reach, understand something from each side. So if you have seen these brands, my question is, can you tell me the years when these companies were founded? So let's start with TVS. Any guess which company it was founded? (1954). Okay, that's a wrong answer. Okay, what about Dabur? Yes. 1881. So TVS is 1911, not 1954. Let me come to Britannia later. We'll go to Dabur. And I am asking exact year. Okay. So what do you think? When was Dabur? 1800 something you said. Very close. Okay. How do you know that? You are from Kolkata? Career with? Okay, great. Okay. So round of applause for you. For good. What about ITC? No idea. Okay. 1910. Britannia. Okay, 1892 to be precise. Kirloskar. Shalimar Paints. So I have assumed that you will not know much, so I'm just showing you the answer now. Okay, Tata Steel. 1907. Somebody answer? Who answered? Big round of applause. Thank you. Very good. And Godrej? Very nice. Good. Okay. And what is the year of founding of JK organization? Oh, this you should know, right? By the way, you are completing your 100th year in this year. It is 2000. Yeah, it's 1918 was when JK organization was founded, and this is 2018, right? So you are completing 100 years, as far as Wikipedia's report and what is written on your website. So that's what I feel. No? Okay, but then the information which you have given out says that you are completing 100th year this year. Okay, so maybe you need to correct that also. Yeah, so formal organization, JK organization was built or registered, I guess, is in 1918. That's the information which is available or outside. If that is not the case, then probably change that. So tell me the right answer. Okay. So tell me, I accept that it is not the right answer, but you should know what is the correct answer, right? What we are trying to say, what is common here? If I ask you to pick up, and there are a lot of other companies, at least there are 20 odd companies in India, if you pick up, they will be showing you similar traits. What is common here? Stable, right? And they would gone through a lot of changes, a lot of turbulence, a lot of external, internal, environmental factors. So they would have seen all of them, right? So you are right. The common factor here is most of the companies have been in the business for more than 100 years. Okay, and I'm not saying that how their business is, which products they sell or where they are. But what we are trying to bring to your focus is something which is durability and sustainability for a long term. When I say sustainability, it's about not 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, or 7 years time frame when you are doing good, but it's about size of 50 to 100 years when you are actually being there and also thriving. It's not just existence, but it's also something which you are really good to be there and really excited to be there. So these are all 100-year-old companies, and question is, what do they do differently? Okay, and what do we do differently? Okay, to be here for such a long period of time and then still going strong. And then if you look at this question, you'll find that one of the things which is distinct in each of the companies which we displayed in the last slide, you'll find that each one of them have a very distinct culture. Okay, the way the question was that they survived not because it was by chance, but there was deliberate attempt to do business in a particular way, and their processes, people, and practices were aligned in such a way it allowed them to respond to the external or internal challenges. Okay, I think that's the point we are trying to put here. Is organization culture is something which allows, it's like a compass which allows you to move as far as the external environment is there and how you're responding to that. So that's something which was very distinct in each of these companies. Now, why is that important? And that's where I think this is a core slide which I will talk about. When you start a business in any field, what gives you advantage over others? There are a lot of things. Okay, so maybe the first thing will be if my strategy is right or not. So what does that mean is whether I'm in the right segment, I am having the right product, I have the right price, and I have the right distribution channel or right marketing strategies. So if you have a product or if you have a marketing strategy which is very different and which is innovative, it takes you in the market for some point of time, till the time somebody who is your competitor copies it. So you were there giving a product which is not known, and then somebody else after few months comes back with the similar product in the same market with the same price and with the same strategy. So what happens, the advantage you had got over your competitor is diminished because you are in the same playing field. Now, the next lever then companies get into is what is called processes. So then I say that I can produce the same product in a more efficient manner and at a much cheaper level than what you can do. And that's where they take advantage as far as their competitors are concerned. Now, after some point of time, the same processes can also be applied by your competitors, and the advantage which you had got as far as your sustainable business is concerned also gets diminished. And that's where you say, okay, so what's next? And that's where technology comes into picture. So I said, I can bring technology in such a manner that it gives me efficiency, it gives me effectiveness, and it also increases my productivity so that I can pass it to my customers, and that's where I will be somebody who will have an advantage over our competitors. Now, these are the things you will see that most of the companies will be playing on. But one of the things which is common here, and now a point will come where I will have the similar strategy, I will have the similar products, I will have the similar processes, and then the question is that how do you differentiate? And that's where the people or the talent which you have in the organization becomes the critical differentiators. Now, a lot of companies ask me that, in our organization, HR is not something which is considered to be a strategic partner, where we are trying our best to bring that. We do everything what business needs, but still the respect and the power and the satisfaction which we should have as an HR professional somewhere, we don't see that. Now, after looking at this slide, you should also understand that every organization goes on a journey. So when you are having business because of your processes, your technology, and your markets, obviously the notion in business leaders' mind is that, okay, people are also something should be good, but are they essential? Might not be the case, because they are getting their businesses from driving levers around processes, technology, and strategy. But the question is, once you are done with these three elements, where do you go? You may have the best of the processes, you may have the best of the technologies, you may have the best of the strategies, but if you don't have the right talent, which is something which cannot be copied, right? If I'm your competitor, I can ask the same consulting firm to refine my processes. I can ask the same consulting firm to come and say, can you bring that technology which is being used by my leader in the industry? But I cannot ask a consulting firm to come and say, can you bring and build a culture which is with the top most company in our industry? Culture cannot be copied. Culture cannot be built in a day, okay? And that's the difference. It requires a strategic vision around how do you do business, why you are into this industry, and what type of people you want, and what you want people to do here. Now, I was talking to somebody, and this company was saying, we are hearing a lot about future of work, employee experiences being heard, digitization of HR, and a lot of buzzword which we have. But we are a traditional company. We are here for last 70 years. But we want to adopt some of the best practices from outside and bring this cultural shift in this organization. Now, it's a very tempting thing to do, because in the media, you always will hear some of the best practices which is adopted by companies, and you'd like to copy that. But it's like an organ transplant. Your body is different, that body is different. But if you just pick up one of the things and say, can I get this in my body, and it start working seamlessly, it may be a little difficult. I won't say that it completely fails, but the build of you as a human being is different than the build of the person from the organ is coming. So whoever tries to copy culture might not be as successful as somebody who is building it right from a strategic point of view. So that's where this slide talks about the importance of culture building. And I can tell you now We are in a stage where technology and processes have brought us to a stage in India where people will not have any choice, companies will not have any choice but to look at what type of culture they are building so that the type of talent they need to expand their business is available to them. Otherwise, it won't take a lot of time for companies to get extinct if they don't look at their culture and their talent philosophy in a right manner. So I think that's where the point that culture is very important comes into picture as far as today's business scenario is concerned. Is this fine? We understand this so that we can move to the next level of how exactly culture is built. Now, when we look at winning cultures and when we look at how culture is built in different organizations, there are 4 distinct ways in which we can, we see companies displaying their culture, okay? And each one of them will give you, we'll have a lot of examples around each one of them. So for example, you will find companies with great culture, they will be proactive rather than reactive from a business environment perspective. So one of the cases which comes in my mind very clearly is a name of a company called Dabur, and I think somebody was working there, he will know this, that and in 2000, 2001, the think tank at Dabur really understood that there will be a slowdown in FMCG market, and there will be a lot of cost pressures which can be seen in the category in which they operated, because it's herbal, it's about the alternate way of looking at wellness. So what they did in 2001, 2002 itself, they created a task force and said, how can we redefine our brand architecture? How do we align our processes to that redefined architecture and create policies, people, practices, and leadership around the same in a manner in which we win in the marketplace? And you'll be surprised in 2010 when actually FMCG market shrunk, the company has a double-digit growth. They were doubling their profit in comparison to all their competitors. And the reason was that their ability to look in future and bring those changes in a way in which it aligns with the business strategy. So that was one. You will also find that there is a lot of, in a group like yours, where you have got a single corporate brand, and then you have got different companies. You are talking about 12 or 14 companies here. So you will have an organizational or institutional brand, and then you will have the business brand, which will have their distinct culture. Now, what we find in great companies that the focus is more on enterprise brand rather than the business unit brand, because business unit brand can survive and thrive and create their culture in their own way in which they support their business, but ultimately the distinction will be diminished at a corporate level. And one of the examples of this I will surely talk about is ITC. According to me, they have got things right from an institutional brand perspective. If you look at that case, and if you look at that company closely, you will find a very distinct feature of what I am talking about. By the way, any idea, people sitting here, on what is the profit of ITC this year? Profit after tax. Any guess? Okay. So it will be in the range of around 12,000 crores, and you'll find that till 1970, they were only cigarette manufacturing company, and they had a very limited spread. They had only 6 manufacturing units, and they weren't somebody who were as big as they are right now with a market capitalization of 2,75,000 crores. So it's a very different giant today than what it was. And if you look at closely what they did right across their leadership, they found that the organizational purpose was nation building and institution building. So they get into different businesses, keeping in mind what the need of the country was. So they got into paper-related product because they wanted to do something in the rural areas, taking advantage of the resources there, as well as trying to give back to the society where they were taking things. They get into the hotel business because the foreign revenues were very important for India as a country, and they said this is the best way to increase tourism and get foreign revenues coming in because of the foreign travelers which comes here, and so on and so forth. So and the fact is that if you go and talk to anybody in any part of the ITC business or a different part of the ITC business, this concept of contribution towards nation and contribution towards building ITC as a brand is very, very prominent. So CEOs, they may be the best CEOs in what they are doing, come and go, but as an institution, this value of ensuring that whatever we are doing is contributing towards nation building is of far more prominence in each one of them when you go and meet them. So that's the focus on building an enterprise culture and understanding what exactly you exist for, what is the contribution you are making to yourself and to the society in which you are operating becomes very, very important and becomes a guiding point for you. Third is showcasing a sense of urgency than being tolerant. I think there are a lot of examples. I will not go in companies who are here for last 100 years, but I will take a company name of, say, somebody like a Snapdeal and Flipkart. So if you look at these two companies and the way they started, both of them had equal start, and at a point of time, I think Snapdeal was doing much better than Flipkart. But if you go close and see the way in which these two companies operated, you'll find a very distinct change in culture in these two organizations. Okay, in one organization, you will have every decision, however small or big it was, has to be passed through the founders. Okay, and they would like to be in the know of each and everything. Okay, and it was very top-down process in terms of whatever you want to do in the company has to go through this. And the amount of deliberation and the time they took to really take a decision was much higher than in comparison to a company like a Flipkart, where you have a group of leaders who said that, okay, fine, if you feel this is right for our business, go ahead and get this done. And while Snapdeal was still thinking of getting Myntra on board and just deliberating whether it's a right decision or not, Flipkart went ahead and bought that at a price which was quite significant at that point of time, but it really made sense for them because the accessories and dress part of their business was taken care of. Okay, so they did not wait long, and there are several acquisitions if you look at their history. And as HR professionals, I would like you to really go deeper and understand the business directions which different companies are taking, understand the context in which they are operating, and also see that what are the ways in which they are actually doing well from their business perspective and where people are coming. It will be a very great learning insights for all of you, because you will really understand that HR and business are not two distinct things. These are something which can be integrated and should be integrated. So coming back to the Flipkart and Snapdeal story, you'll realize that after a point of time, Snapdeal started losing its market, and somewhere they realized that they were reacting to what Flipkart was doing rather than finding their own way in which they can do their business. And the result is in front of us. What happened to these two companies? And it was, there are business imperatives, but one of the important aspects why they met what they met as far as their fate is concerned is the way their culture was defined in their organizations. And that's very important lesson for us. And the last is empower rather than to command and control. I think in all winning cultures, what we find is there is a sense of empowerment given to employees. They have the belief that they can do things. They are not fearful of experimenting and failing, because at the end of the day, they know that whatever they are doing is for the betterment of the company, and there are leaders and managers who will back them up if they are not successful. So it's not operating from fear that people are here to find what is wrong in me. By the way, as managers and as HR and as leaders, we do that job much better than anything else. You know, if I'm meeting somebody who has brought something to me and has done 7 good things, but I can always go back and say, but you didn't do the 8th thing right. And that creates a culture where you are fearful, you are a little cautious, and you don't want to take risks, and that's where you say, okay, I just have to meet the standards of what people are asking me rather than pushing the envelope. And I think all the winning culture do this differently. And one of the examples is a lot of innovations where you see in companies like 3M, where they say that if in your sales targets, 30% of the revenue should be coming from products which has been invented in the last 2 years. So, okay, so even if you have met your targets for the year, from traditional products, it's not good enough. But as a sales professional, you need to put pressure on your research team, the distribution team, and marketing team in such a manner that they work together collaboratively, and help you give a product which you can actually bring in your portfolio. Okay, so it's like decentralized. You do what you want to do. It's an outcome-focused environment. I'm not there to really pinpoint that these are the things you should be doing, but at the end of the day, you should be delivering results, and whatever it requires for you to do that, you know, you feel that you are empowered as far as that process is concerned. So I think if you look at all the great organizations with great culture, these are the 4 distinct things comes out very clearly. Yes. Sure. So I think I will give you an example, but let's not focus on that word. What we wanted to talk about is sometimes when companies are doing good, they are on top of their game, they start realizing that they have covered everything, okay? And they miss on some of the things which your competitor is seeing, and you are not able to see that. So for example, I'll give you a couple of examples, and for that you to understand, you need to know why companies fail. Okay, now we have seen why companies has been there for the last 100 years. And for every company here, I think there are at least 100 companies who have folded up. And by the way, one statistic says that in 1954, the number of companies in Forbes 500 list, there were only 20% left in 1985. And from 2010 to 2015, only 5% of that companies are still in that list. So it obviously means that a lot of companies are also vacating place when they were great, but they are not great now. And there are a lot of examples like Nokia, Kodak, companies who were thriving, but then they just missed one aspect and they betted on a wrong place where the market was moving on somewhere else, and they realized they are not relevant right now. One of the Sony
is also like that, especially their smartphone business is
just folded up. And they were doing pretty well. So, and one of the examples, I think it's a very interesting example I will give. I will not say it's common sense, but I will say that how as culture, you are not able to see things which others could see how the market is moving. So I'll give you an example of a company called Toys R Us. If you have heard this company, it was one of the largest toys selling company. Okay, and they have a turnover around 4 billion USD. Okay, it's not a small company. And they were doing pretty well. And in 97, 98, this entire thought around going online was coming in. And they said, online business is something which is, good to have, okay? And we should try doing that. But we do believe that if we are selling toys to kids, the kids would love to come to our stores. And if you have ever seen or been in Toys R Us stores, you'll find that they are very, very large stores, spread across multiple meters, okay? And your kids, if you take your kids there, they will be lost because they have so much to play. They can actually experience, and there is no restriction by any of the shop in not using one of the toys you have. So I think it's a place where you can actually have fun. Now, Toys R Us did not imagine that if a kid is going to come and buy a toy, most of the kids were coming to the shop to play first rather than buy. Okay, and they were able to create stickiness because of that involvement of kids during the stay in the stores. Now, it is common sense that is what they were applying, that if you have kids coming to your store multiple times, then the chances of them liking something in the toy portfolio you have is higher, and they will buy from you. But they forgot that the decision to buy a particular toy, while is the kid, but the payment is done by the adult, and adult does not have enough time to spend as much as the kid will have because they are busy and they have plenty other things to do, okay? So when they go to the store, they will say that whatever you want to do, buy, just buy, and let's move on. But the kid will say, no, I want to stay back here, right? They focused more on the kids rather than the parents, thinking that that's where the target audience is. Anyway, that's the strategy. But then what happened is they realized that online is coming, and they said, let's also build a online retailing site for us so that people can buy from online also. And they built it, and people ordered, and it was Christmas of 1999, and a lot of customers were very unhappy because Toys R Us could solve the problem of being online, but they could not solve the problem of the supply chain. Because you have bought, but then the toy has to reach to your place in a particular time, because gifting at Christmas is very, very important for the kids in US, okay? And there was a lot of backlash, and company was forced to shut down their online option. Then saying, we are not good here, we cannot do anything about it. And the solution what they came out is what in the hindsight you will laugh. They said, now let's go to, we cannot build that supply chain, so let's go to a company who has the online site as well as the supply chain to help us, so we will collaborate with them. And the company they collaborated was none other than Amazon, okay? And they went to Amazon and said, would you sell your toys from your platform? Okay, we will give you plenty of things. And Amazon said, why not? It increases our inventories, and it's good. And they signed a deal saying that if you get somebody else, you have to pay us $50 million as penalty, because that's not something which we want you to do. And as it happened, that Amazon started selling more toys after a few years on their platform than what Toys R Us was selling. That's where, and they also said to other toy making companies like Metal and other, other Legos, they come and sell because our portfolio just keeps increasing. And then Toys R Us realized that they have made a mistake, and they could not see the future, that future was going to be something like that. And they filed a case against Amazon, and Amazon said, you have put a clause of $50 million fine, I'll give you $100 million, but let me go out. Okay, I am not interested in being with you. Okay, anyway, because I have built a portfolio. If you don't want to sell through us, it's fine. Because all the toy manufacturing companies whose toys you're selling is already there on my platform, so please go ahead. And there was fine cases, everything was done. From $4 billion in March 2018, they filed for bankruptcy. Okay, and they are shut. And this is something, if you look in the hindsight as a case, you'll realize that there are a lot of things which I said comes here, but what also comes here is the basic misunderstanding of things which could influence your business in the long period. So it may not look common sense to you right now, but if you reflect back later on, you'll realize that this was something we should not have missed. Okay, how a company with $4 billion turnover cannot create a supply chain for itself when a startup like Amazon, which does not have a lot of credibility at that point of time, is actually doing that. So I think that's the point I was trying to make as far as this statement is concerned. And there are a lot of case studies around it. If you look failures, you'll find there are a lot of things which they could have done, they have not done, and that's why they are wiped out from the market. Sure. Yes. 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 Yes.
Every city, there is something by name Kamani.
Yes.
Or something or the other. But they are just out. Nothing they have today. Nothing. Completely gone.
Yeah. So if you look at their, and that's what I'm saying, is what has made you big today, and their, success has lot many fathers, but failures are orphans. Nobody wants to own them. So nobody will say that what went wrong. But something has gone wrong, right? And this thought of being proactive, this thought of being showing sense of urgency, showing, do you know that Amazon has won 3 Oscars last year in Oscars in the red carpet? And whom they are competing with is Walt Disney's of the world, or Universal Motion Pictures. Now, they could not think that a company like Amazon is producing movies which is winning Oscars and which they were never existence in last 15 years. Okay. Now, you don't know from which side the competition is coming in, and you don't know who will be your next competitor. Okay. And that's where a winning culture allows you to constantly scan the marketplace, and you have a mindset that how do we suppress, surpass things which we are doing. And that's where, for me, ITC case study is just amazing, because they have been somebody who is doing it extremely well. They might come across as very bureaucratic from outside. They might be coming across as somebody who is very slow in decision making, but they are guided with the overall vision that whatever we do, it has to add value to the country as well as to our stakeholders. So that's very clear. So I might be slow, but when I do things, it will be extremely good. Yes, that's a culture. That's a different culture.
So I just want to end one thing.
Yes.
Toy company was saying, I don't think they have made a mistake tying up with Amazon, because Amazon had a competitive advantage in supply chain management.
Yeah.
And the company did not have it. But the mistake was the deal they will pick Amazon, that they will allow only Amazon, or the Amazon will not restrict Amazon.
Because they have put the fine clause. Anyway, this case, can be read from different angles. Okay, you can have strategy, you can have supply chain, you can have HR. I have picked up this from an angle of people, that people who are advising, people who are seeing proactively, and the question can also be that why can't we build versus buy? What can we do? So this case can be read from different angles, and people can be one of them. So I was just responding to his answer. That's what felt commonsensical. Right now, maybe not something which they look at very strategic decision to go ahead with somebody who has a competitive advantage rather than trying to build themselves. So I think we are talking about a case which can have multiple angles of it. But the question is that sometimes when you are big, when you are doing well, a lot of things you can take granted, and that's where culture allows you to be either looking proactively of what can be done, or sitting back and say, okay, everything is going well. So things will just move as they are. So I think that's the question we are trying to put across here. Okay. Now I have talked about culture importance. I have got some data, and these data tells us very clearly that those companies where culture are aligned to their strategy, people are engaged, they would also like to stay back and the companies where they are culture which is misaligned to strategy, and I will talk about it. It's not a management jargon. I will tell you what exactly it means, strategy not aligned to culture, in the subsequent slides. But those companies where people feel that the culture is not aligned with what organization is trying to do, you see that 71% of employees are either passive or disengaged. So they don't bring the best from their own perspective. And 75% of people tend to feel that they should be leaving the organization. They don't want to stick there. So it's a huge cost of not having a right culture. But if you are engaging people and you have a large number of people who are engaged to you, the chances of you building a solid and a culture which is, which gives you an advantage is much higher. You also have, data around how a winning culture allows you to retain more people. From a turnover perspective, it also allows you to have net employee scores. It's something, you ask only one question from your employees, that would you recommend this place as a place to work for the way you do in NPS? And you'll find that you will have 27% more people giving you the results on, encouraging them to be aligned to the culture which they are operating. And from a business perspective, if you look at revenue as well as EBITDA, you'll find that companies where culture is aligned to the strategy gives you at least 4 times more results than a normal company. And this data which we are talking about is from our own research done from a research study which we do is called Aon Best Employer. And we have picked up companies where culture scores were very high in comparison to the rest of the organizations, and also looked at their profit numbers, EBITDA numbers, and this is something which was coming out very clearly. So culture is important, there is no doubt about it. Okay? Now, that's the reason why when we go and talk to CEOs and senior leaders, they keep talking to us that how can we fix our culture. Culture as a subject has become very, very important for the CXOs. They don't only think about strategies, processes, and technology, but now they are talking about how do we have a winning culture where everybody comes together and delivers what we are trying to deliver. And 46% of organizations are identifying definition of organization's culture as key priority going forward from there. So this has become such an important subject, and it's not something which is very good to know, and it's with the HR team. I think it's something which we should be very, very curious about. I have a video. Okay, if I can play that video by any chance. This video will tell you, and it's a very simple video, and this video will tell you how culture is built. Okay, and this is an experiment where some monkeys were put in a room, and they were asked to do something. Okay, and what they did actually made a lot of difference to way you can have a comment on how culture is being built. So this one video of 3 minutes will help you understand how culture is built in different organizations and what you should be doing about it.
A group of scientists placed 5 monkeys in a cage, and in the middle a ladder with bananas on top. Every time a monkey went up the ladder, the scientists soaked the rest of the monkeys with cold water. After a while, every time a monkey went up the ladder, the others beat up the one on the ladder. After some time, no monkey dared go up the ladder, regardless of the temptation. Scientists then decided to substitute one of the monkeys. The first thing this new monkey did was go up the ladder. Immediately, the other monkeys beat him up. After several beatings, the new member learned not to climb the ladder, even though he never knew why. A second monkey was substituted, and the same occurred. The first monkey participated on the beating for the second monkey. The replacements repeated until what was left was a group of 5 monkeys that, even though never received a cold shower, continued to beat up any monkey who attempted to climb the ladder. If you asked the new group of monkeys why the beatings took place, the answer would probably be,
Well, I don't know. That's just how things are done around here.
Yeah, so did you notice something in the video? Any learning from this? Did you understood what was being shown? Yeah. So I'm not saying things, is happening here or at places, but the experiment was to do around how habits are formed or how rituals are formed. And sometimes you will realize that you have been doing something and you come from outside and bring your own ideas, but the force, generally the way people around you will react is that don't question, things are the way it should be. Okay, and if you are at a position of not being significant, okay, if you are a leader, that's a different thing. But if you are somebody coming from outside and at a lower level and you're trying to know why exactly you are doing, somewhere the label which is given to those people is that you are not aligning to what we are trying to do. So things are being changed from a millennials perspective, but that's the reason why we are also seeing a huge gap between the engagement of millennials vis-a-vis Gen Ys in the organizations, because they will have distinct culture experiences and expectations from the firm, because they will question a lot, they will seek answers, and then you have other generation who will say that don't question much because we have some objectives to take and that's why we will move forward.
They don't care now.
Who will not care?
When they survive. The answer is very good. If they don't answer, they don't care. That is what happens. Practice becoming habit and habit becoming.
Yes, absolutely. This is the simplest way. So what you are doing becomes ritual, and then ritual is become a part of your culture. Now, whether we know or not, 80% of your culture comes from your founder or the CEOs. And it's not something which they talk, but what they do makes a lot of difference. So I may say that we want to be an inclusive culture, but when you speak up, you realize that that person is not actually willing to hear you. And then the action versus the intention gap actually gives me a notion that you are not willing to change something, okay? And whatever processes, whatever technology you can bring to bring that culture change, but if you look at the CEOs or the founders not aligning to what you are telling, and they just want to do things in their manner, culture shift will not take place. So one of the things take out is that culture shift needs to come from top. It cannot be bottom up, because that's where the maximum resistance comes into picture.
Then what can poor HR do?
We will talk. The poor HR has to first influence the CEO. Okay.
And then you are talking about the shared vision. Shared vision we have to share, and we have to come from top to top.
There are different ways in which shared visions are created, and that's where, again, organization culture comes into picture. So there will be cultures where the top will say, this is what we want to do, and then cascade it down. But there will be firms will say that, okay, let's hear out from people what exactly they are. So it's a bottom-up approach, okay? So it's, again, the cultural nuance comes into picture, that what type of culture, and this, again, is the leadership. I will say leader and leadership team defines how things will happen, because they have the power and authority to make an influence, right? Your culture is not what you think it is what the team think it is. And I think this is one point I will put very clearly, that the number of leaders I meet and the amount of misconception they have about their culture is not funny, because they may be thinking something different, but the team and the ground thinks something very different. Okay, and when we do exercise where we say, when we ask leaders to say, what are the core 4 or 5 elements of your culture, please write now, and they write from their ranking orders. And then we also ask, given the business you are in, what are some of the things which should change? So in the change scenario, what are the top 5 things you should have? And then we go back and ask the same questions to the large population, saying that, what do you think your current culture is, and what do you think your future culture should be based on the business challenges you are facing? And we find that, first of all, there is a lot of misunderstanding even at a top level. So the point I will put across as my top 5 priority vis-a-vis what my team members will put, there is a lot of dissimilarity. So their alignment is not starting from there. And then when you go down and look at the data, you find that people at the ground are thinking completely different the way the leaders are thinking. So if that is the case in an organization, we realize that it's a question of culture not either being aligned or not being communicated in a manner in which it is understood by everybody. So this becomes very important. Culture is the lead indicator of the brand, and we are talking about employer brand because the way you attract different people, the way different people come and join you, also notice what type of culture they are getting into. And I said that you may get the best person from the best performing company to come and join you, and you will realize that they are not performing because they could not align with the brand or the culture which you are giving them. So I think that's where it becomes very important. There is no such thing as good or bad culture, only strong or weak culture. So what does this mean is that whether your culture is giving you impetus towards meeting your goals, or is it just being there and it's not a part of your strategic direction. So it's nothing called good or bad culture. The stronger the culture, the less corporate processes a company needs, and strategy would be the bricks, culture will be the mortar. Now why we are saying is that in great cultures, there are things which are understood. It's like a tribe, okay? You don't have to make processes for everything. You know that every Saturday evening we will meet for dinner as a family. It's been understood by everybody. So while there is not a written rule, you will find that people invariably coming and sitting together. So I think that's the point which we are trying to make here. But the backbone is a strategy, because if the culture is not mixed with your strategy, then these are the two things which will go in a very different direction. And I think that's where it's not very beneficial for the companies. Yeah, so that's the book written by Kurt Kaufman, with whom I worked for 4 years. And the point which he mentions there is, I can have the best of the strategy. And I can, and what I mean by strategy is, say, for example, I want to be the best customer-centric company, right? And this is the strategy you have adopted. You have gone out and told the world, but for the smallest thing, you haven't empowered your people. So when the customer comes back to you and say, this is the problem I have, you say, but I have to go and check with my manager. I cannot give you an answer right now. And the experience the customer has is completely different than what you are talking about as far as your strategy is concerned. So if I have a culture where I have to go back and ask things from my seniors for everything, and you are trying to build a customer-centric organization, I think these are two distinct things. And that's where, after some point of time, a strategy will go for a toss because you haven't built a culture which is supporting that. So I think that's the notion of culture. It's strategy for lunch comes into picture. And if you look at the culture context, this is the core model, where culture is about the organization's operating environment, or made simply as how things are done here. So if I ask you JK culture, you need to think about how things are done here, okay? And it is, if you break it down into 3 things, it's behaviors, it's beliefs, and it's your decision-making process. And when I say behaviors is is shaped by the leadership team, their leadership styles, their work orientation and their communication. Beliefs are what is important for our business, that particular thought. Is it customers important or the processes important? Is it the brand important or the people? Is the profit important or people important? So whatever your beliefs are, I think you will start building your culture around that. And the decisions is around how do you make your choices? Is it collaboratively? Is it top down? It is bottom up. It's about whoever can do whatever. It's empowerment. So if you bring this together, the culture, behaviors, and beliefs, that's where the definition of culture comes into picture. Now, again, a very, not very perfect example, but if I go to videos, a video which I saw, the decision which was taken by different monkeys there was, we will not let others climb to take the banana. That was the decision. We will not let others. The behavior was that whoever is trying to go up, we will beat them up. Okay, so that the person does not go up. And the belief was that going up and taking the banana is not good. Okay? So if you look at the belief, behavior, and decision triangle, if somebody from outside comes and watches them, they realize that it's a culture where you are not allowed to go and get results. Okay? Because that's where you are being stopped. So I think to understand that very simply, I think whenever you talk about culture, you have to think about your beliefs, behaviors, and decisions, and that's where culture is being built. Now, culture as a word, you will have distinctness. I can have a macro culture, okay? If you again simplify things, the business goal, if you really want to sustain your business for many years, you have to do only two things. One is continue getting customers, and second, continue servicing your customers in a manner in which they don't go away. Okay, these are the only two things you will do. And most of the time, these customers are either brought in by Salesforce or the frontline, or are also serviced by frontline team. And you have the managers who manage these frontline teams who are responsible for better today because they are looking for execution. And then you have the leadership team who is constantly looking at future to ensure that you have a better tomorrow. Now, the leadership team's behavior and the structures create a macro culture that as an organization, these are some of the things which we believe in, and that's how the macro culture will look like. But you can have different sort of cultures created in the number of managers whom you go and meet with, because every person's style is different. So while my overall brand macro culture says that we should empower people, but within that culture, you will find that there are managers who are actually empowering, and there are managers who are not empowering. So we cannot just brush and say that if the macro culture is of empowerment, everybody is doing that. Now, what best organizations do is they align their macro culture with micro culture. So I'm not saying that almost all managers will start behaving in a similar manner, but maximum of them will really understand that these are some of the things which we need to do from an organization's perspective. Now, I will take example of Google's manager. The KRAs which they are given is not what teams do individually. So it's not like typically in an organization you'll find that my goal as a manager will be a sum total of what my individual team members will achieve, right? Typically, that's how it is considered. But if you go to Google, their idea of being a manager is very simple. So they say that your goal is to make everybody in your team make their numbers. Okay, so you are an enabler of their success. No, we are not going to judge you based on what number you have done, but number of people in your team who has been successful and made their KPI. So when I come walking in the office, the question which I ask myself every day is that how can I make you successful? Is there anything which is coming in your way? The mindset shift is around not me, but you, right? And that's where the cultural change comes into picture. Now, if I say that I will give you a promotion if your team achieves X target. So the way I will come inside the office every day, I will think, what should I do to ensure that my people give me the result which I am looking at so that I can get promoted, right? It's again a different cultural dimension. Now, is everybody is capable of doing that? I don't know. And they also don't believe that everybody can do that. And that's why it's a very conscious choice by people there that if you really enjoy doing this, then only opt for being a manager, else just follow your individual contributory role, because that will be good enough for you to get to the prestige and money and whatever exposure you're looking at. So it's not that I was doing good in my past role as a salesman, that's why you have made me a sales manager, but it's because I really thrive making people successful, that's why I want to be a manager. And I think that's the cultural shift which we are talking about. Okay, and that's where macro and micro marries with each other. Otherwise, you will have a good macro culture, but then I can have a different experience of working in JK depending upon which company I am working in, and within the company, which manager I am working in. So I can have a very different reality based on what experience I have, and that's what great organizations minimize. So irrespective of where you go and work, basic values will remain same, and you will have the similar experiences of the culture. And that's why they will be winning organizations. So I think that's the point I wanted to talk about when I showed you this slide.